his politics. But like to do that, let's just like dive into the article. So it says, I'm just jumping into kind of like the middle of it. It says, one is Peter Thiel, the billionaire who helped fund NatCon and who had just given the conference's opening address. Thiel has also funded things like the edgelordy and post-left inflected New People's Cinema Film Festival, which ended its week-long run of parties and screenings in Manhattan just a few days before NatCon began. He's long been a big donor to Republican political candidates, but in recent years, Thiel has grown increasingly involved in the politics of this younger and weirder world, becoming something like a nefarious godfather or genial rich uncle, depending on your perspective. Podcasters and art world figures now joke about their hope to get so-called Thiel bucks. His most significant recent outlays have been two young Senate candidates who are deeply enmeshed in this scene and influenced by its intellectual currents. Hillbilly Elegy author J.D. Vance, running for the Republican nomination in Ohio, and Blake Masters in Arizona. Thiel has given more than $10 million to super PACs supporting the men's candidacies, and both are personally close to him. So it's like, sort of skipping ahead here, it says these three, Thiel, Vance, Masters, are all friends with Curtis Yarvin, a 48-year-old ex-programmer and blogger who has done more than anyone to articulate the world historical critique and popularize the key terms of the new right. You'll often hear people in this world, under many layers of irony, call him things like Lord Yarvin or our prophet. I was looking around the party for Vance, who hadn't arrived yet, when Milius nudged me. That's Amanda Milius, daughter of famous screenwriter and director John Milius. Nudged me and pointed to a table off to our left. Why is it whenever I see Curtis, he's surrounded by a big table of incels, she asked with apparent fondness. I spotted Yarvin, a slight bespectacled man with long dark hair, drinking a glass of wine with a crowd that included Josh Hammer, the national conservatism-minded young opinion editor of Newsweek, and Michael Anton, a Machiavelli scholar and former spokesman for Trump's National Security Council. Michael Anton, you might remember, is the guy who wrote a book about how Machiavelli would dress in sort of modern men's fashion.
Oh, yeah, in the United Flight 93 election.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, this guy, he's selling Michael Anton short. I think of him really more as a scholar of fashion and, do's and don'ts for like how to wear cufflinks and comb your hair.
That is one thing I think is interesting about this article. There aren't that many new faces in it.
No, not really.
Like it's all kind of people that we've like heard from. Though I guess that is just going to be part of the dance too. It's just we're going to get the same people for 20-year stretches in everything.
Speaking of people that we've heard about quite a bit on this show, he says, this new right is heavily populated by people with graduate degrees, so there's a lot of debate about who's in it and whether or not it even exists. At one end are the NatCons, post-liberals and traditionalist figures like Benedict Option author Rod Dreher, who envision a conservatism reinvigorated by an embrace of localist values, religious identity, and an active role for the state in promoting everything from marriage to environmental conservation. But there's also a highly online set of Substack writers, podcasters, and anonymous Twitter posters, our true intellectual elite, as one podcaster describes them. This group encompasses everyone from rich crypto bros and tech executives to back to the landers, to disaffected members of the American intellectual class, like Up in the Air author Walter Curran, whose fulminations against groupthink and techno-authoritarianism have made him an unlikely champion to the dissident right and heterodox fringe. Actually, I used to work with Walter Curran back at Live Right. He was a smart guy. I liked him. Just skipping ahead, though. All right, let's talk about JD, because, honestly, I'm going to have to eat some crow on this because I thought there was no fucking way he was going to beat Josh Mandel, and now it looks like he definitely is. So
I cannot believe that. God, Trump threw him a fucking lifeboat and a half, didn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, it turns out, like this whole article is about if you have these like narrow choke points, like something like a Trump endorsement, you can fixate on like a very online rhetoric and politics that might not have a lot of resonance beyond that, but which is going to do the work that you needed to do, which is validate you through, a figure like Trump.
So it says, Vance believes that a well-educated and culturally liberal American elite has greatly benefited from globalization, the financialization of our economy, and the growing power of big tech. This has led an Ivy League intellectual and management class, a quasi-aristocracy he calls the regime, to adopt a set of economic and cultural interests that directly oppose those people in places like Middletown, Ohio, where he grew up. In the Vancian view, this class has no stake in what people on the new right often call the real economy, the farm and factory jobs that once sustained middle-class life in America. This is a fundamental difference between new right figures like Vance and the Reaganite right-wingers of their parents' generation. To Vance, and he said this, culture war is class warfare. So, I mean, like, yeah, like
it's very convenient.
Yeah, yeah. And here's the thing, like, and like we'll get to Blake Masters in a second, and like Vance is talking about like we could be, like sort of rekindling like manufacturing and Blake Masters has a whole thing about how we should be like ordering our economy so that we could like, have a single income household and sort of like support more traditional families and sort of like an earlier era of American middle class life. The one thing I don't see any of these guys talking about is labor unions or raising wages or universal health care or anything like that. It just seems to me they just keep saying.
Yeah, we saw it when Chris Smalls went on Tucker, which like I A, think was a good decision. B, think Smalls did very well. But when Tucker himself went, well, I'm usually against unions. Like, I mean, there's just not that much of a fucking departure. There really isn't. And when you say cultural warfare is class warfare, that really does kind of give up the game. I mean, we're going to get to Masters in a bit, who, full disclosure, I noticed was following me, so I followed him back in the event that he wins, and I can get at least one favor out of a senator. But someone asked him, this YouTuber asked him, like on Twitter, you're saying this stuff about like you should be able to support a family on one income, and I'm interested to know how you would do that. Like, what changes you would propose? And he gave like, I get the best description of his answer I could give is like slightly to the center of Club for Growth. We're just not seeing anything here. I guess we're gonna bring wages up by like talking about which professors are annoying.
Yeah, and like I guess like my thing is like I like it's being sold as how kind of like weird and out there it is as compared to the rest of the right wing in this country, which like I mean they're all weirdos. I mean,
well, yeah,
like,
but like here's the thing about this is I did read the article, and it's a lot of people made fun of the fact that it opens with them talking about how it's cooler. This is a cool right. People are like LOL, but that really does speak to, I think, what the actual political program here is. Like, sure, it has there is of course this electoral element to it. Yeah, sure, give money to Vance, give money to Masters, get these ideas out there because that's you have to have people in the arena to initiate things that you can then talk about to create like the meta discourse that makes up these independent media sources. But I think a guy like Teal probably knows, and all the savvy people in this thing know that like you're not going to take over the government in this way. You're not going to change the real direction of American politics. I mean, the whole point of this critique is that you can't do that, right? Like that the machine is overtaken, and that the cathedral is unassailable from outside. I mean, a lot of the people in this thing are disaffected Bernie supporters who already went through this whole thing with the Democratic Party and now are just doing it again with the Republicans. It's not about taking power, I don't think, really. I think the reason that Teal is doing this, the deep reason, is that he understands that the real solution to the culture conflict we have is not going to be one side winning and taking over. It is going to be the gradual segregation. As you know, you're going to have the same logic of hyper capitalism undergirding the same techno dystopia, but it's going to be branded differently, and the people who can afford to, everyone else is going to be either cast into the fucking Shadowlands or turned into the slave class necessary to keep the thing going. The people can afford to are going to pick which techno dystopia they're going to live in, and there's going to be one that's going to be filled with hyper woke, incredibly virtuous liberals. It's going to look like an Apple store, and it's going to be for somebody like a lot of these like jaded cosmopolitan types. It would be absolutely tedious and horrible to live. Oh my God, can you just imagine having to genuflect to do land acknowledgements every moment? I mean, just to drown out the sound of like the literal human processing facilities that are going on in the next room. But the other one, the other techno dystopic campus is going to look like a fucking Johnny Rockets, and it's going to be filled with evangelical patio dads who are going to be tedious dullards. You need cool people to hang out with. That's what this is for Teal. It is getting these disaffected, mostly former left-wingers who have given up on politics, getting them on board for signing off on a right-wing version of the techno-utopia so that they can all do coke together in their bunker. That's it. He's just looking for recruits. He's looking to hang out with, because otherwise it's just him and a bunch of Mitt Romney assholes standing around in fucking pressed jeans coming up to their nipples. He imagines himself too cool for that.
He just wants cool guys to do blood pranks with.
Yeah, because there is this real crisis of like the liberal hive mind is becoming genuinely hysterical at the prospect of the future, of standing on one side of a fence watching the world die, and they're trying to make themselves okay with it with this increasingly hysterical performance of virtue that is incredibly tedious and unfun to hang around with if you're not captured by its logic. But the alternative are a bunch of just dumbasses, are Neanderthalic type Republicans, and that's no fun either. And so the solution is to get people who can't hang with the liberals to accept the reality, the necessity of culling the herd, the necessity of getting rid of false notions of empathy and sympathy to dominating politics, but are still ironic, fun, can do bits, can do spoofs and goofs, are not leadenly earnest and attached to some like unconsidered American reactionary Christianity. Like maybe they're Catholics, but like they came through it, through this complicated intellectual process, which means that they have laundered out a lot of the tedium of like the lumpen American Christian. And then you can hang out and do blood pranks for eternity.
Everyone, let's morb it up, gang. Let's get morbed out here.
That's it. This is the promise here is let's get morbed. let's morb it up. Let's stop the fantasy. If we're going to drop the fantasy that we can do anything politically, then my God, we should also drop the fantasy that we have to embody some sort of virtue in our lives to make up for our position in it. Because